Have you ever met someone who never seems to get angry? Not calm, not peaceful, but someone who never shows even a flicker of frustration, irritation, or rage, no matter what happens around them. You might think this person is enlightened, emotionally mature, or simply blessed with incredible self-control. But what if I told you that Niccolò Machiavelli, the master of political strategy, would have seen something far more disturbing in this behavior? There's something deeply unsettling about a person who never reveals anger, and it has nothing to do with inner peace. Machiavelli understood human nature in ways that most people never dare to explore. He knew that emotion, especially anger, is not just a feeling but information, communication, and most importantly, a form of power. When someone systematically conceals this fundamental human response, they're not transcending emotion, they're weaponizing its absence. Today, we're going to explore one of Machiavelli's most chilling observations about human behavior. The people who never show anger aren't the evolved ones. They're often the most dangerous. Not because they're violent, but because they've learned to convert their rage into something far more sophisticated and destructive. Cold calculation, strategic manipulation, patient revenge. Machiavelli wrote that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. But what he didn't write about explicitly, yet understood implicitly, was the most dangerous predator of all. The person who has learned to be both lion and fox simultaneously, never revealing which one they're being at any given moment. We live in a world that celebrates emotional control, that sees the ability to remain calm under pressure as a virtue. But Machiavelli would have asked a different question. Why is this person choosing not to show anger? What are they gaining by keeping this information from you? And most importantly, what are they planning to do with all that suppressed rage when the time is right? Because here's what most people don't understand about anger. It doesn't disappear when you don't express it. It transforms. And in the hands of someone who understands power the way Machiavelli did, that transformation can be absolutely terrifying. They don't explode. They calculate. They don't react. They plan. They don't lose control. They take it. If you've ever felt uneasy around someone who seems impossibly calm, who never raises their voice, who appears to have achieved some kind of emotional superiority over everyone else, your instincts might be trying to tell you something crucial. You might be in the presence of someone who has learned Machiavelli's most dangerous lesson, that the appearance of virtue can be far more powerful than virtue itself. If you want to understand the hidden dynamics of power, manipulation, and human nature that most people never recognize, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We explore the dark truths about human behavior that philosophers like Machiavelli revealed centuries ago, truths that are more relevant today than ever. The person who never shows anger isn't necessarily at peace. They might be at war, a cold, calculated, invisible war where you don't even know you're a combatant until it's far too late to defend yourself. First sign. They've mastered what Machiavelli called the art of appearing virtuous while being ruthless. When most people get angry, they reveal their position, their vulnerabilities, their triggers. They show you exactly what matters to them and exactly how to hurt them. But the person who never shows anger has learned to keep this vital information completely hidden. Machiavelli understood that in any relationship, professional or personal, information is power. The moment you reveal what angers you, you've handed someone a weapon they can use against you. They know your boundaries, your values, your breaking points. They can push those buttons whenever it serves their purposes. But the person who never shows anger has reversed this dynamic entirely. They're constantly collecting information about what triggers everyone else while revealing nothing about themselves. They watch you get frustrated, observe what sets off your colleagues, Note what makes your friends lose their composure, and they file all of this away for future use. This isn't emotional maturity, it's emotional espionage. They're not above anger. They're using their ability to conceal it as a strategic advantage. While everyone else is busy having authentic emotional reactions, they're busy studying those reactions and figuring out how to exploit them. Watch how they respond when others get angry around them. Do they seem genuinely surprised by emotional outbursts? Or do they have this calm, almost knowing expression as if they were expecting this reaction? Sometimes they even seem slightly amused, as if other people's anger is entertaining to them rather than concerning. Machiavelli wrote that men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims. The person who never shows anger understands this perfectly. They know that emotional people are predictable people, and predictable people are controllable people. They might even deliberately say or do things that trigger anger in others, not because they're sadistic, but because they're strategic. Your anger gives them information, makes you look less professional or composed, and reinforces their image as the calm, rational one in the room. This is psychological warfare disguised as emotional intelligence. They're not managing their anger better than everyone else. They're managing everyone else's anger to their advantage. Second sign. Their calm demeanor masks a meticulous memory for perceived slights and injustices. Machiavelli understood that revenge is a dish best served cold, but he also knew that the coldest revenge comes from those who never appear to be angry about anything at all. The person who explodes in anger gets it out of their system. They yell, they express their frustration, they clear the air, and then they move on. But the person who never shows anger doesn't forget. They don't forgive. They don't move on. They collect grievances like a strategic resource, storing them up for future use. This is what makes them so dangerous. While you're having heated arguments and emotional confrontations that resolve quickly, they're building a comprehensive psychological profile of every time they felt wronged, dismissed, or disrespected. And they remember everything with perfect clarity because they never diluted these memories with emotional expression. They might bring up something you said 6 months ago that you've completely forgotten, but they quote it word for word. They remember exactly who didn't invite them to what event, who interrupted them in which meeting, who got credit for ideas they believe were originally theirs. Their calm exterior hides a mind that works like a computer, cataloging data and waiting for the optimal moment to use it. Machiavelli believed that it's better to be feared than loved, but what he really understood was that the most effective fear is the kind people don't realize they should have. When someone explodes in anger, you know where you stand. You can defend yourself, argue back, or remove yourself from the situation. But when someone never shows anger, you have no idea what they're thinking, planning, or preparing. They might smile at you while mentally adding your latest comment to their growing list of reasons you can't be trusted. They might congratulate you on your success while already planning how to undermine your next opportunity. Their emotional absence isn't peace, it's preparation. The most chilling aspect of this behavior is how patient they are. They don't need immediate satisfaction or quick revenge. They can wait months or even years for the perfect opportunity to address what they see as injustices against them. And when that moment comes, their response will be so precisely calculated and devastating that you won't even realize it was revenge until it's far too late. Third sign. They use other people's emotions as tools while remaining emotionally unavailable themselves. This is perhaps the most Machiavellian aspect of their behavior. They've figured out how to benefit from emotional connections without ever making themselves vulnerable through emotional investment. They know exactly what to say to make you feel understood, validated, or supported when you're going through difficult times. They position themselves as the stable, reliable person in your life who never adds to your stress or drama. But notice something crucial. While they're incredibly skilled at managing your emotions, they never actually share their own. When you're upset, they offer perfect advice. When you're excited, they respond with appropriate enthusiasm. When you're worried, they provide reassurance. But if you try to reverse this dynamic, if you ask them how they're feeling about something challenging in their own life, you get generic responses, deflection, or the conversation somehow turns back to your situation. Machiavelli understood that emotional reciprocity creates bonds, but it also creates vulnerabilities. These individuals have learned to gain all the benefits of being seen as emotionally supportive without ever actually being emotionally invested. They're like emotional vampires, feeding off the intimacy and trust that others offer while giving nothing genuine in return. This creates a profoundly unequal relationship dynamic. You feel close to them because they've been present during your vulnerable moments, but they don't feel close to you because they've never been vulnerable with you. You think you know them, but you only know the carefully curated version they've decided to show you. They might even use your emotional revelations against you later. Information you shared during moments of trust becomes ammunition they can use if you ever fall out of favor with them. They remember your insecurities, your fears, your family problems, your professional anxieties, and they know exactly how to exploit these if it serves their purposes. The person who never shows anger often positions themselves as everyone's confidant while never needing a confidant themselves. They become the center of multiple people's emotional worlds while maintaining complete emotional independence. This isn't strength. It's strategic manipulation of human attachment patterns. Fourth sign. Their absence of visible anger often coincides with an unusual amount of control over their environment and relationships. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the importance of controlling circumstances rather than being controlled by them. The person who never shows anger has often achieved an extraordinary degree of control over their surroundings, but not through obvious dominance or aggression. Instead, they've learned to shape situations so subtly that other people don't realize they're being managed. They might always end up making the final decisions in group settings, not because they demand it, but because they've systematically undermined everyone else's confidence in their own judgment. They ask leading questions that guide conversations toward their preferred conclusions. They present limited options that all serve their interests, while making others feel like they're choosing freely. Watch how often things go their way compared to other people in the group. Notice whether their preferences consistently become the group's decisions. Pay attention to whether people seem to naturally defer to their judgment, even when they're not officially in charge of anything. This level of control requires enormous amounts of suppressed anger and frustration. Normal people get annoyed when things don't go their way and either accept it or express their disappointment. But someone who has to control every situation is constantly managing tremendous internal rage about the unpredictability of other people, while never letting any of this show on the surface. They might orchestrate social situations to exclude people they don't like, manipulate professional opportunities to benefit themselves at others' expense, or create circumstances where they always look good compared to everyone else around them. But they do all of this so smoothly that people admire their leadership skills rather than recognizing their manipulative behavior. The absence of visible anger allows them to maintain the illusion that they're naturally gifted at getting what they want, rather than revealing the truth, which is that they work incredibly hard to control every variable in their environment because they can't tolerate the normal frustrations of human interaction. Fifth sign. They have perfected what Machiavelli would recognize as the most dangerous form of power, the power that doesn't look like power at all. The person who never shows anger often wields influence in ways that are completely invisible to their targets. They don't give orders, they make suggestions, they don't threaten, They express concern. They don't punish. They simply withdraw their support at crucial moments. This is the ultimate expression of Machiavellian strategy. They've learned to achieve domination through apparent submission, to control through seeming helpfulness, to punish through what looks like natural consequences rather than deliberate retaliation. If you cross them, you might not face immediate backlash. Instead, opportunities you were expecting might mysteriously disappear. People who used to support you might gradually become less enthusiastic. Information you need might become harder to obtain. Projects you're involved in might face unexpected obstacles. But none of this will be traceable back to them, because they're never obviously angry or vindictive about anything. Machiavelli understood that the most effective exercise of power is the kind that your enemies don't recognize as power until it's too late to counter it. The person who never shows anger has mastered this completely. They can destroy someone's reputation, career, or relationships while maintaining the appearance of being a supportive, calm, reasonable person who just wants what's best for everyone. They might express sympathy for the difficulties you're facing while being the primary architect of those. They might offer to help you solve problems that they've secretly created. They might position themselves as your ally while systematically undermining your position with others. The most chilling aspect of this behavior is how they can ruin someone's life while genuinely believing they're the victim in the situation. Because they never allow themselves to express or even fully acknowledge their anger, they can engage in incredibly destructive behavior while maintaining complete psychological distance from the harm they're causing. And here we reach the heart of Machiavelli's most unsettling insight about human nature. The people who appear most virtuous are often the ones you should fear most, not because they're hiding obvious vices, but because they've learned to transform their vices into apparent virtues. The person who never shows anger isn't more evolved than people who express their emotions honestly. They've simply learned to channel their emotional energy into forms of power that are harder to recognize and impossible to defend against. They've weaponized their emotional absence in ways that would make Machiavelli himself both impressed and deeply disturbed. Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few experience what you really are. The person who never shows anger understands this principle better than almost anyone. They've crafted an appearance of emotional superiority that hides a reality of cold calculation, patient revenge, and strategic manipulation. Their calm isn't the calm of inner peace. It's the calm of someone who has learned that emotional transparency is weakness, that anger is information that can be used against you, and that the person who controls their emotional expression can control everyone else's emotional responses. This doesn't mean that everyone who rarely shows anger is dangerous. Some people genuinely have learned healthy emotional regulation. But Machiavelli would tell you to look deeper. Ask yourself, does their emotional control serve their own interests at the expense of others? Do they use their calm demeanor to gain advantages in relationships and professional situations? Do they seem to remember slights and injuries with unusual clarity? Do they have an unusual amount of control over their environment? If the answer to these questions is yes, then you might be dealing with someone who has learned one of Machiavelli's most dangerous lessons. That the appearance of virtue can be far more powerful than virtue itself, and that the person who never shows anger might be the angriest person in the room. The greatest protection against this kind of manipulation is understanding that emotional authenticity, including the honest expression of anger when it's appropriate, is actually a form of strength, not weakness. When you express your emotions honestly, you're choosing vulnerability over power, connection over control, authenticity over strategic advantage. The person who never shows anger has chosen the opposite. They've prioritized power over connection, strategy over authenticity, control over genuine relationship. And while this might make them formidable in certain contexts, it also makes them fundamentally isolated from real human experience. Machiavelli's ultimate insight wasn't that cruelty is better than kindness, but that the appearance of kindness could be used to achieve ends that overt cruelty never could. The person who never shows anger has learned this lesson perhaps too well. They've discovered that emotional absence can be more manipulative than emotional presence, that strategic calm can be more destructive than honest rage. Your instinctive unease around people who seem impossibly controlled isn't paranoia. It's recognition that something essential is missing from their human presentation. And what's missing might be the very thing that makes genuine relationship possible. The willingness to be seen, known, and yes, occasionally angry in ways that make them as vulnerable as everyone else.